All right. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. This is a Q&A webinar, and I am Matt Karst. I am the marketing specialist for Rainbow. I will be moderating this webinar today. And guest speaker introduction, we have Tom Carmen, who is the Director of Arborist Development with our Rainbow Tree Care, Renee Crawford, who is our Marketing Manager, and Jeff Hafner, who is the Director of Municipal Consulting. So a little housekeeping slides before we get started. If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A box. You'll see down below right here. This format's a little bit different than how we've normally done our webinars up to this point. This is kind of an open forum between our three guests. So if you have any questions that arise from one of the pre-selected questions that we have, feel free to type that in and we will interject and kind of have that flowing as more of like a conversation. This webinar is being recorded, so that will be sent out to you tomorrow afternoon in a follow-up email. And with that, we will get started. I will add one more thing. There are no CEUs for this one. We did apply but not get approved through ISA. And with that, we will get started with our marketing section. So first question, how do we best phrase technical language online to appeal to our target audience who is unfamiliar with the language or industry?
So our recommendation really is less is more here. Most homeowners know very little about the services that you offer, the products that you use to actually fulfill the services. And so because of that, it's really important to keep your language very high level. Don't use your website as an opportunity to talk about everything you know, but more about what are your services you offer and how can they best help your customers. You may want to say high level, we use a product that is used in this way. And most homeowners will say, okay, that sounds good, versus getting really technical about what the product is, what's in it, what ingredients. And if somebody really does ask, then share it with them in person so you can explain more versus having everything you know on your website. So really keep it brief, keep it high level. And excuse me, focus more on the services and how they help the customer versus all the products and all the things you have.
All right, perfect. See if we have any questions that come up. All right, next question. What is the best way to advertise treatments in an effective way to those who might not know what EAB treatments are?
I would kind of put this in the same category as our last question. At Rainbow, we advertise and talk more about what EAB is. We supplement then with some of the treatments we do to actually treat for EAB, but we focus more on the awareness of what is EAB, how is it impacting trees, how does that translate to homeowners as well as the city overall. Versus the actual treatment that happens. To do this, we have a number of different advertising methods that we do. For years, we've been creating content that goes on our website, but then we send out through email and share on social media. And that's really content talking about EAB. We have a number of different blog posts, as well as pages on our site and talking about what it is, how do we treat, how is it impacting the Twin Cities locally, not just, certain areas, but the whole Twin Cities and the state. We partner with some municipalities and we use direct mail to reach homeowners within that area. Those have been very successful for us. And then also we are now this year expanding our initiatives to share that awareness and using our local newspaper, some magazines, social media, digital and display and video, and really trying to get that story out about EAB versus how to treat for it. We obviously talk about treatment as the option, but we don't lead with the treatment as in our ads.
Right. Can't sell treatments if they don't know they have a problem in the first place, right?
That's exactly right.
All right, next question is, How do I improve my website's search results ranking?
So overall, there are a couple things you can do. Content is a big way to increase your rankings. So having content on your site and refreshing it often allows the search engines to pick it up and increase your rankings. Using keywords, specific keywords, so that if somebody is searching for a certain issue or topic, that helps increase your rankings. Also local search keywords. So using things like what we use is in Minnesota or in the Twin Cities. So if somebody was searching for EAB in the Twin Cities, that helps increase your rankings as well, because it becomes very local, but also helps people or residents know that you're a local company. Let's see here, what else? You can use site links, so links to your site as well as backlinks. So if you link to another website, there's reciprocal of having somebody link back to your website, and that helps increase your rankings through the search engines. Within your content also, including there's specific things that the sites are, or the search engines are looking for. So like a headline or special tagging, which happens a little bit on the back end, but that helps, again, increase your rankings as people are searching for certain topics. And then lastly, I would say social media engagement can help as well. The search engines also, they scan, all of the web, and if you have high engagement on your social media, that also helps increase rankings on a page. SEO is really what we're talking about, so search engine optimization, and we specifically work with an agency because there are so many things that happen behind the scenes, the keyword research, making sure all of our pages have specific tagging. So we like to work with that third party, because otherwise it would be a full-time job for somebody in certain cases. So, there are things you can do on your own, but then also if you're really looking to boost your improve your rankings, you might want to look into a partner to help you.
All right. Next question. How do you market plant healthcare? What are some examples of marketing that have worked well for Rainbow?
So a short answer to this question is we don't. We really don't market specifically for plant healthcare. There are a few things we do market. So like we were talking about EAB earlier, if there are certain issues that come about that we might want to share, like say chlorosis, but we always lead with what is the problem, and then here are some solutions that we have to help. So we don't actually go out and market for any specific plant healthcare services, because a lot of our customers and a lot of homeowners don't realize they have a problem until they've had a deeper conversation.
Yeah, just to elaborate that on a little bit, one of the things we'll talk about a little bit more in the sales portion later is that, this is an opportunity to get on the property. Most people are going to call because they have a pruning or removal need. And if you do some training with your sales team, with your consultants, they're able to look at and ask for permission to make recommendations on those other services. And that's where the vast majority of our plant healthcare recommendations actually come from.
Right. What direct mail marketing pieces have worked best in your experience?
So we send a direct mail piece out every year, and that is a very simple 8.5 by 5.5 postcard. It's the most cost effective to print as well as to mail. And we've found that it works best. We've tested other methods, and this one has been the tried and true that we keep going back to. We mail once a year, like I said, and we make sure to incorporate a URL, a phone number on there. And then also we've most recently been adding a source code, I guess you could call it, or a coupon code. So we always mention this code. And that way our customer service team can also track things, and we can tie all of our leads and sales back to direct mail. The other thing we have found with direct mail is you can actually, if you use Google Analytics to track your overall marketing, Google Analytics, most direct traffic in most cases, if you have a very specific URL, you can see that direct traffic lift happens when your postcard mails. And so there's a nice way to attribute it, a good percentage of that back to direct mail. And with that, we've actually found that direct mail pieces have converted to a lead on our website at a higher rate than many of our other marketing materials. So, in our experience, keeping it simple, using a really cost-effective method and tracking abilities is what's made it successful.
One thing I'd add on that quickly, Renee, is we've really seen a trend over the last several years. The number of people who are calling in relations to a marketing piece seems to be decreasing, and more people are responding via web forms. And I think one of the things, just thinking for myself and my wife, when we're responding to things, oftentimes we're busy during the day, so we're not calling when there's business hours. And I think a lot of our clients are in the same boat, and they may see this at 8, 9, 10 o'clock, and they'll enter on their tablet. They can hit that link, pull it up, and they can put in like, hey, here's what I'm looking for, and then somebody from our place can follow up with them at a business hour time. So if you're not using that right now with some way for to have a way for them to contact you online, that would be an area that we see a lot of growth in.
Okay. What do you feel is the most, sorry, let me start over. What do you feel is the more effective, social media or email blasts?
So it really depends on what your goal is. Social media is mainly used for awareness and engagement with your audience. If you do use paid posts, you can target to have conversions, so having web forms or lead forms, phone calls, things of that nature. Email is typically more drives more conversions. We're driving people right back to our site, and very easy for them to fill out a form as well. So really it depends, and we use both because you want to hit that upper funnel and reach that, spread the awareness and create engagement. And then the lower funnel is once they've come to our site and filled something out, we have their email that we can continue to send them offers or send them, tips. We send every few weeks, we're sending out some information about what's going on during the season. So yeah, using both is really key to a full funnel marketing strategy.
All right, and now we will be moving on to the technology portion of this. So what technology and tools do you use in your sales and marketing, and what advice do you have for selecting the right one?
So I can start in marketing. We use a number of different tools to select what we're running and manage performance. Mainly we use Google Analytics to manage performance, so we're able to see anybody who's landed on the site. Even like I said earlier, an offline or a postcard, a print ad, if you have very specific tracking set up, you can at least see lifts in traffic to your site during those timeframes. But we're also able to see how many people came from certain channels, as well as how many lead forms were completed right there on the site. We use a third-party email tool, so we are able to email out through this third-party tool. That also allows us to use segments and review performance from an open perspective, open to click to open rate, things of that nature. Choosing a platform, so we use .digital. It's a medium, it's a platform really that we felt was good for our medium-sized business, but there are other tools for email like MailChimp, Constant Contact that would be great for a small business, and help you manage your contacts and then create segments to send marketing out. Facebook platform obviously is a tool we use, and we are able to look at performance through Facebook. And then lastly, we use a project management tool to work through all the projects we have running at the same time, and making sure that everybody on the team has, is assigned to what they need to have done on a certain time frame, so we can, efficiently make sure that our programs are going out on time. But I know sales has another few tools that they use to manage our customers.
Yeah, so we used to use a custom database that we had been using for about 2 decades. We recently moved over to new software. And probably the most critical thing is that you've got to have some way to collect and manage, ideally, the trees on properties. Without the ability to, keep a record of what's on the property and what recommendations and treatments you've been doing, it's nearly impossible to be efficient and effective in how you're taking care of your customers' landscapes. So I think the next slide, Matt, if you want to just show real quick, the basic stuff that we like to try and cover and collect are, we geoplot the trees on the property. We collect the identity of the tree, the DBH. We don't really collect the height so much, the canopy or the square footage of the area, the number of trunks. You can put other details and information there. You can take photos of the trees specifically that can be part of recommendations. All of those things are part of what we find to be really critical. And this has really sped up some of the things in our sales process, both on how we follow up on recommendations, but also on the ease and ability to get proposals out there from the time we look at things to the time that customer can say yes to them.
Hey, Tom, is this the software you all are using now?
Yep, this is Arbor Gold. And I will tell you, just being really upfront and truthful, years ago, we tried to work with them and it did not go well. Then we struggled along with our legacy software that we had. And we worked with a number of other entities to try and develop stuff. And then we came back to them, and it's been a completely different experience for us this time. And many of the things we had talked about with them previously, I think they had developed, and they're continuing to work with us on. So we're really pleased thus far. I won't lie to you, it's a lot of work and a lot of struggle to switch over a company our size and get new software. But whatever you're using, if there's a way to leverage, keeping some kind of history or management of what's being done with the various trees on a property, it goes a long way to helping you develop and increase your PHC sales.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the sales portion of the Q&A. Started off, where do I start with creating and how do I grow and nurture B2B commercial relationships?
Yeah, so the founder of our company, Tom Prosser, when I started here over 30 years ago, I don't know if he coined it or if it came from someplace, but Tom talked about primary client generators. And these are people that would help generate clients for you. And so one of the areas, or a few of the areas that we've worked with are garden centers. Some of the bigger garden center places in town here, we work closely with them. The arborists that we have in that area will stop in there during the growing season once a week to check in. They know that we're coming in. People will bring in and they'll collect samples from clients or from their customers coming in. They hand them out our information, a little trifold brochure that we have about rainbow, because they obviously don't go out to people's properties and do that kind of stuff. Same thing can go with landscapers, landscape designers, lawn care companies, that don't compete with you. The different municipalities. We've formed a lot of partnerships with municipal cities in the Twin Cities with some of the program and work that Jeff Hafner has done with our Emerald Ash Borer programs. And, you know, all of you know that cities aren't supposed to give direct recommendations, but they definitely steer people very clearly, I think, in certain directions when they know that they're looking at those, as we call them, clients. They're their residents, and they're who they're trying to take care of. And so they want to steer them towards, you know, good, reputable companies.
Do you have tips to streamline or improve efficiencies in the sales process from leads to estimates to invoices and beyond?
Well, the biggest tip I would give would be to document your processes. Really look at what you're trying to accomplish from the point that a client calls in right up to the point where you've received payment from them, and that transaction has kind of come to a close. Even beyond that, there's some things that you can do as well. But really looking at it and figuring out, you know, what needs to actually happen. For us, one of the things, for instance, at the very beginning that we started doing years ago was when clients would call in to make an appointment, we send out a confirmation email that includes the kind of a picture of who that consultant is that's coming out to meet with them, with a little bit about the company and a biography, a few sentences about that salesperson. And it goes a long ways to establishing a relationship right from the beginning. But you know, everything that you're doing in your process or in your sales process, you want to document and develop a process for, and really look at and talk with the various people at how you can improve that and continually hone it to make it more effective and efficient. So, you know, beyond that, you know, we could spend the whole time, you know, talking about specific things, but really, I mean, we have literally documented sheets that show a flow chart using, you know, Visio type software to document how you follow up on a proposal, what the time intervals are, how you do it, and things like that. Not because we're trying to hit overkill, but because what we found over the years is what makes total sense to some people is not common sense for others. And so by having these things documented, you give people something that they can follow, like a blueprint. Not to create robots out there, but the basic things that have to happen as part of a sales process, it makes sure that those aren't missed.
How do you develop an IPM contract?
Well, believe it or not, we have very, very few of these that we really develop. What we really look at more is developing either tree management plans, which are typically a 3 to 5 year plan that we lay out with commercial properties, or with residential customers. We consider it more of an annual tree plan and or an annual management plan. And each spring we send out all of those recommendations, and those include the things that need to be renewed, but it also includes recommendations of things that we saw while we were out the previous year that might have been too late to do. We literally used to call them just too lates. And we would enter those into our system so that we wouldn't forget about them, and make sure that those could be sent out to clients. And believe it or not, clients are amazed when you remember to send these things out, because people forget. So when you're able to present all of those recommendations for the very specific things that we want to be treating or that we want to do proactive healthcare on, that's really the way we look at, you know, an IPM contract, rather than it just hasn't really caught on here, at least in the Twin Cities, the notion of somebody paying money for us to come out and look at things and only treat what needs to be treated. We do it in a very much the similar way, but they get more specifically what we're going to do for them, and that they're just more comfortable with that in this marketplace.
So Tom, I'm going to ask the clarifying question. So would you consider pretty much all of the contracts, residential or commercial, kind of some form of property management? It's not based solely on one tree, but more of all the trees on the property?
It is, because no tree is cared for in a vacuum. What you might want to do on specific trees is going to depend on what else they have on the property. What are the prospects of those trees? How does the client feel about the various trees on a property? Years ago, I got really clear about it. I was all excited when I was an elm care technician injecting trees, and I explained to this woman how we were saving this tree, and it was all exciting. And she then looks at me and says, "Damn, I hate that thing. It gets leaves in my gutters every year." So you really have to listen to what people are interested in. But yes, it's each tree is not in a vacuum, although what you do, is very much focused on each specific plant on a property.
All right. How do you identify other problems on the property and upsell?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, when Renee was talking about, she mentioned how we don't really market plant healthcare. We do for some very specific things like emerald ash borer or chlorosis, things that people can tell there's something wrong with, or Japanese beetle. They can see that there's something wrong and they can see what it is, and we will market right at that time that it would become apparent to people. Those they can respond to, but most other plant healthcare, we sell a lot of tree growth regulators with our Cambistat product, and it works amazingly well on certain issues. But we've never once had somebody call up asking for plant growth regulators. And so what we do is what's really critical is to look at your sales team and provide some kind of sales training for them. We have, what we've developed is a 7-step sales process. And the first thing in our process is always to find out what's important to the client. So when we go out there, you always want to address whatever they called you about, which is typically a pruning or removal item. And then you take some time to position yourself and the company. That's our second step. The third step is really kind of asking for permission. And that's the key, is as you're walking around, we are an expert on trees. And as we're walking around, we just ask permission. If we see other things, do you want us to mention those to you? And people rarely are like, well, I wouldn't be interested in that. So you're able to look at maybe some other things, and sometimes you don't even have to say anything. You just stop and look at a tree, wait a little bit, and the client will ask you, what are you looking at? And you can point out things that you notice that don't need treatment, but other things that they might want to consider. And the way we work with our clients, it'd be silly to walk out to somebody's property who wants to prune their maple in the front yard and not mention to them when you see a big ash tree, to not bring up the notion about emerald ash borer and find out if they're aware of what that means to them, and if they want to maintain that tree or if they're going to take it out. So really, it comes to training your sales team to really be serving the client, because you can see it as a way to make more sales. But if you're approaching it as being in service to the customer and really help them manage their property and find out what's important to them, that's how clients will relate to you. You'll become this person who they trust and whose recommendations they'll want to listen to. And they'll also recommend you to all their friends and neighbors. And it's a great way to get onto more properties. So.
What are some of the best ways to maintain customers after treatment?
Well, the simplest one is to stay in contact. I would like to say we were able to get out to all these properties and check on how our treatments worked. We do that on larger properties. We do have a pretty good idea from doing evaluations on treatments. If we treat things with the right products at the right time, we get pretty successful results. Typically, if something isn't working, a client will let you know. But otherwise, it's getting out to to that property, stopping out periodically. Sometimes just swinging by a client's property when you've got a few minutes with other appointments to check something out, or you drive in by and you see something and it's a long-term customer, so you'll check that out. The other stuff is some of what Renee talked about a little bit, sending out these email blasts, pertinent information. Sometimes we're not even asking for, anything in particular. We're just talking about things to, as we go into the fall, what are some things that you might want to, take into consideration regarding your trees and what you might want to do to prep them for winter here in Minnesota, or as we come out of the spring or during the summer, what are things, if we're having a really droughty summer, we might send out stuff on proper watering, just as a tip. And then, at the bottom, you say, hey, we're always here if you've got questions. So just keeping yourself present, and your name there, because what we want them to do is the moment they see anything odd with their trees, we want them to think of us and give us a call. So anything you can do that keeps you at their forefront of their mind is going to be, useful in that manner.
I would also say that we, our social media, we try to be fairly active there. And again, providing information. We very rarely try to sell something through our social channels unless it's more of a paid ad. But people who have already started following us, sharing information, tips, something that makes us valuable and top of mind so that when somebody has an issue, they remember us versus, possibly choosing someone else.
And the other thing is, like I said, we send out these annual plans. Some of our clients, we think of them as renewals or spring letters is what we used to call them years ago. But I'm always amazed at how many of our competitors won't follow up on the recommendations and the plans that they set forth with people, previously. I've walked out to innumerable properties where one of the trees has Dutch elm disease, and you'll find out that the client treated with another company 4 or 5 years ago and then never sent them a follow-up that it was due. And the best way you can maintain some of those customers is to let them know when should they be doing something again. That's what they trust us to do, is be that person who can keep track of those things for them, because people have busy lives. And it's amazing how many of those people will thank you for sending them out 4 follow-up emails, and they're busy and they finally like, oh my God, thank you for being persistent with me. If they really don't want it, all they have to do is say no to it and we take them off the list. So I guess that's it on that one.
Do have a follow-up question with that. What percentage of your clients are located in urban areas compared with clients on larger properties in rural areas? And how is your methodology between urban and rural clients different?
Well, we really don't have any rural clients, I would call it. We have, in the Twin Cities, it's, I don't know, Jeff could probably tell me, around 130 municipalities in the greater Twin Cities metro area. There's more of the core cities where we're obviously have a stronger presence. And then as you radiate out, the Twin Cities is also, unlike some areas of the country, we move out in all directions. The area spreads even into neighboring Wisconsin for part of it. And those, the one thing is we probably, just don't have as many customers in those outer fringe layer areas. One way we've tried to deal with that is to open up other satellite offices or production offices, so that we have them at different areas of the Twin Cities so that we can service them in a reasonable manner, in a cost-efficient manner. But other than that, as long as it's within our service area, we treat them all pretty much about the same. And unfortunately, if you're in a more rural area, I guess I just don't have the strength to speak to that because it's not what we really do or cater to over the years.
Okay, how do you educate homeowners, property owners, and municipalities on the importance of PHC? Are there any differences in how to approach these groups?
And I can start with this one being primarily focused on working with municipalities. In my experience, the sales process that TC outlined doesn't really change. Where you see the big differences is in what is important. So for municipalities working on a scale of, managing thousands of trees, their goals might not be perfect tree health every time. Their goal when it comes to managing ash trees, for instance, might be a manageable annual removal volume. So then the care that is recommended is focused on achieving that goal. and not always down to that individual tree health level. But the questions that get asked are essentially the same, and then looking for ways to offer recommendations that help them accomplish the goals that they have for their trees.
Yeah, and I would say that it's not really about the importance of PHC. You know, it's going back again to when you find out what's important to them. If the trees are important on their property, the various PHC recommendations that we're making are really in support of meeting those goals for them. So if they've got a tree, I mean, I literally have clients who tell me they would move out of a house if it didn't have this tree anymore. And I've had some of them move when they lost a tree because it literally wasn't the house that they wanted to be in anymore. It sounds extreme, but that it's real, and it makes a huge difference for some people. You know, the way trees shade a patio, and so finding out, you know, what's important to them. It's not about the service; it's about the outcome or how it impacts their lives. And if you stay focused on that area, that's what people will budget money for. That's what they feel. It's not because they know how important, you know, fertilizing their tree is. What they do know is how important that tree is and how it makes their property feel the way they want it to feel. That's what they'll respond to, not the service itself. So any difference in how to approach these groups, you know, as Jeff mentioned, you know, it's a little bit different maybe with commercial properties versus individual homeowners. With commercial properties, especially like homeowners associations, condominium associations, HOAs, things like that. You're managing it again at that bigger level, whereas a specific homeowner, you know, you're really only down to usually a couple of people maximum that you've got to you know, have competing interests maybe that you got to address. But it really always comes down to finding out what's important for them on the property and, you know, what they're committed to, what do they want to have maintained. And then we let them know, you know, how we can help support that.
How do you package PHC services to be more sales team friendly?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I'm hoping that the person who asked this question ahead of time is on the call so that they can clarify a little bit more. Here's what I'm guessing you're asking, and that is one of the things I found when we're talking about pricing PHC and from my team is that if it takes them a lot of time to do it, they won't do it. That there's always a, you know, with this industry, the growing season, you know, in the spring and summer, we're incredibly busy and there isn't extra time and it always gets filled to capacity. So you've got to make stuff simple and not force them to have to calculate out the stuff. We create pricing models and pricing sheets that allow people to have some kind of measurement that's tangible, like the diameter inch size of a tree or the square footage area, or the estimated amount of hours or time that something's going to take with things like pruning, and make it so that if they can just put a tape measure around a tree, they've got the information that they need for that, you know, treatment, or the square footage. If they collect that basic information, they're in a position to make those recommendations and make them really quickly. And they're not responsible for the profitability on those services other than to follow those measurement guidelines. You know, I've talked with a lot of companies who expect their salespeople to look at a product and they want to recommend fertilizing. Well, figure out how much product they're going to use and go through, you know, look at what they're paying for the materials and all that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you, if I had to do that, I wouldn't be spending a lot of time making those recommendations either. And so, you know, but if you, by you, I mean me as the person who's responsible for it, have looked at all those things, we know how many square feet we can treat, you know, and how much time from our history we can look at and apply those costs, figure out what we want to make for profit, and very reliably give them guidelines that if they measure out, you know, 2,800 square feet, there's a price for that. And there's discounts that they can apply at certain volumes. And they don't have to figure all that part out. All they have to do is be responsible for taking measurements and making the appropriate recommendations to the customers. And that makes all the difference in the world on whether or not your team will make PHC recommendations. And we're a very large company, and we're at about 48% of our revenues are plant healthcare and about 52% on pruning and removals. And that's, pretty abnormal number, but it is really grounded in our commitment to being that, that total management resource for our customers, not just a pruning and removal company. No feedback came in, so I'm hoping that hit the nail for whatever people were asking there. Well, this one is a really big question. How should I price my PHC services? And I would, kind of refer to what I just said. The best way is to find measurable things that allow for, easy pricing of your services. In a nutshell, you take all of your costs, your overhead costs, plus your fixed, what you have for fixed costs, your variable costs with labor and materials, and add in what you want as a profit, and that's how you should price something. When you're first starting out, one of the best ways to do it sometimes is to look at, there's a whole talk I gave recently. I don't know if those are still available, Matt, for people to listen to, but there's a whole talk that talks about, pricing models and how you approach these. One thing you can do is look at what your competitors, what are the market prices out there that other competitors are charging, and be in that ballpark. The downside to that is you may not have the same volume. You may not get the products at the same cost. Your labor costs may be higher or lower. So it doesn't give you a real exact way to know if it's a good service for you to be selling at that price, but at least it will get you, what you want to do is get your foot in the door. You've got to be somewhere, near where your competitors are offering a service for, or you've got to have something compelling for them to want to choose you. If you're charging more, you're offering better service, more reliability, better timing, things like that. So, but ultimately, again, it really is important to have a strict model that you can follow. Not only does that make it easier for your salespeople, but it's going to make it much easier for you as an owner or a plant healthcare manager to be able to evaluate that and say, okay, we were charging $10 an inch for this service, and we did, 4,200 inches, and here's how much time it took. And you can then use those numbers to look at, and then you can model it, using a spreadsheet and say, okay, if we wanted to get this, amount of profit at the end, how much would we have needed to charge per inch? And you can apply that against, even the trees that you did. And you can easily make adjustments then to match up with how your production operations are able to deliver a service. Or conversely, you can look at and say, what, for us to be able to do this service, we've got to be more efficient in how we're delivering, this. We've got to, do more training on how we could be more effective, or we simply have to sell more of it so that we can have more trees to do in specific areas. Any of those things become available to you then if you are using a model that is easy to follow. And I can go out to, what's really nice is it makes it so that if one of my salespeople, I can send out any of our 20 plus people, if they put a diameter tape around a tree, we might be off by half an inch where people are measuring, but clients are going to get a consistent price from us as well. And that's something that will, being consistent that way helps your reputation in the marketplace too.
That is my bad.
Looks like we got a few more minutes. Are there any other questions that people have?
We got one last one on here too. How do you keep your team up to date with treatment options?
Well, we do have a treatment guide. One of our people here is responsible for updating and keeping that current. But for all the different plants, that we treat, you can look it up by plant and then look at, what are the insect pests and diseases or abiotic issues that they have. And then we have various recommendations, and those can vary sometimes, even with some of the soil applied materials that we use. It may vary depending on the time of year that you're treating, because of how fast the product moves into the plant, what its longevity is. So it's critical, and really what you have to do to support that, we meet on a weekly basis with our sales team, even during the busy times of the year. We have business meetings and science meetings. And as much as people say they don't have time for it, you don't have time not to do it, because the amount that people spend in those meetings and the information that you're able to get everybody aligned on is invaluable if what you want to do is be effective out there in making good, accurate recommendations to your customers.
All right, we did have a couple follow-up questions. Being one of the only PHC providers in our area, are there pros and cons to reaching out to landscape companies to offer our services as a subcontractor?
Well, the answer I would tell you is, as a subcontractor, not maybe quite as much. One is, making sure that you're going to end up getting paid. We learned that through experience years and years ago. The other is, you could get confused with the person who you're subbing for. If they're not returning calls, if they don't, appear or work within the same values that your company operates, your company could be thrown in or looped in with them and treated and viewed that same way. So it does put your reputation potentially at risk. But in general, if you're able to offer those services and you've got somebody that you trust and can work with, it can be a great way to do that. In fact, we do some subcontracted PHC services for a few small companies here in town that just don't do that. They do pruning and removal work, and we've forged a relationship with them to do certain things, particularly with like Dutch elm disease treatments, where we take care of that, and we just have made an agreement that we won't solicit those people directly for that type of work. So, pluses and minuses both ways.
Okay, next one that came in. Can you share your plant guide?
They're talking about our treatment guide. I don't know. I don't know that would be very useful for somebody. If it's Orlando Tree Consulting, I can almost guarantee you that our treatment guide would not be very useful for you down there because of the types of plants. But I do believe, talk with your territory arborist from Scientific Advancements. They do have an enormous amount of resources that provide basically the same kinds of information. They have guides with protocols that detail out the timings and the products and how to do all the kinds of things that we would have in our treatment guide. And they're going to be tailored. Those are, they have all kinds of ones for things we don't even have here in the Twin Cities. So that's where I would probably steer you towards.
Yeah, and those are there's a few on the website. Diagnostic guides are more of like the treatment guides. You can look them up by insect or disease. We do have those in print offs as well. So you can either reach out. I think Patrick Anderson would probably be your best bet if you've talked with him in the past. He can send you out the right ones, or you can just reach out to our tech support or customer service and they can point you in the right direction.
The question about, are we treating any nuisance fruit or nut trees to control the amount of production like sweet gum or walnut? Not much here in the Twin Cities. We do a very little bit with using Florel or a similar product on crabapple trees to try and reduce the amount of fruiting on them. But it's only a couple of sites where they're really, really picky about that. It's not something that you can get into some real trouble with that. It's literally parts per billion, I think, that you're using on those plants. I know they use it in the orchard business quite a bit more, but for us, we don't really have sweet gums growing here, and walnuts, not a big issue for people. Typically, we have so many squirrels, I don't think walnuts ever become a nuisance here. On the marketing side, do we provide flyers, et cetera, to our customers? The answer is yes, although we've done a lot more of that digitally. So it's not as much on print ones anymore. We have what we call fact sheets. Some people call them sales sheets or sell sheets. We have a little brochure, kind of a trifold brochure that talks about all the services and things we offer. We'll leave that with people with new customers, or give one for somebody to hand to their neighbor. With COVID, obviously, we really scaled back on the amount of things we were trying to hand to anybody and do most stuff digitally. The real advantage there are, multiple advantages. One, it's less costly because you don't have to print things out. They don't get outdated because you can, if you're sending them a link, even the link can always go to the updated copy. So if you make some adjustments to your protocol or to the timings or things like that, they're always getting the most up-to-date information. But that's how we've sent more of them nowadays, is we send them as links where they can just open them up and it takes them right to the link on our website for that particular document or, supporting literature. But it's part of our, in our sales process, educating our customers. And then we always say as needed, because not everybody wants to be educated. Some people just want you to solve it for them. But it is a great way to, as they walk around, they say that most people keep about 15% of what you tell them. And clients will visibly look relieved when you tell them that you'll give them information about all the things you're talking about. They'll actually be able to sit and listen to you as you walk around more, rather than worrying about that they're going to miss stuff. And it makes for a much better experience, both for the customer and for you as a salesperson.
All right, that looks like all the questions that we have in there. Go through these last remaining slides, and if any more come through, we can touch base on those. We got a few minutes left. We do have upcoming webinars still. They are a little bit more sparse as spring starts to ramp up. We do have one more Q&A webinar this Thursday with our operations team. And then you can see down there through the link, you can also sign up for our spotted lanternfly research update demonstration and our EAB tree injection demonstration as well. Before you sign off, you will be prompted for a quick 5-minute survey. We do appreciate that you fill those out. That helps us kind of figure out what we should do for our next webinars, or if we should keep doing the same thing and stuff like that. So we do appreciate that feedback. And with that, see if any more questions have come in. Nope, I think we are good. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Tom, Renee, and Jeff for joining us as well. If you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll let you get a few minutes back to your day. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks.